Hi, I'm TJ Thielen with Source Allies, and welcome back to the series where we walk through all of the basic configuration of Codebeamer, where we take out-of-the-box Codebeamer and configure it for our own project. In this video, I'm going to show you how to configure your tests. So Codebeamer has 4 different trackers that are built in that handle testing. We have test cases. These are going to be the content of your actual test. If you want to know what 1 plus 1 equals, you're going to say, I'm going to throw 1 plus 1 and expect it to equal 2, all into a test case. Next, you have test sets. These are just groupings of test cases or of other test sets. Next, we have test configurations. These are going to be the environment that you want to run the test in. You can just associate a configuration with a test and then go back and look and see, oh, these tests passed with this configuration, and basically use it that way. Finally, we have test runs. Test runs are going to be the actual execution of a test. It is taking the test cases and the actions that you defined in them and saying whether they actually passed or failed. All right, so now that we have how all of these relate to each other, let's start creating a test. I'm going to start out by going to the test configurations tracker and creating a new item in here. Here, I'm going to add a name, and I'm just going to call this our test configuration. We could add a description or an association if we'd like to. We don't really need to, so I'm just going to click Save. All right. At the top, you can see that we have activate and inactivate. Just like any other tracker, test configurations have state transitions that you can define permissions for who you want to advance it to the next phase if you'd like to. I'm not going to worry about any of that right now, so I'm just going to leave this how it is and move on to creating a test set. So I'm going to navigate to the test sets tracker and create a new item here. All right, so we've got a lot of options here. First off, we have possible run configurations. This defines which configurations you're allowed to associate with a test. If we click this pencil icon, we can see that we can add this test configuration as an option to be associated with future test runs. And the same thing would go for possible run releases, where you could click this pencil and view releases that you've created and associate them and say they can be related to future tests. But we don't have any releases in this project, so I'm not going to worry about that. Next up, you can say if you want it to be sequential or not, and you can define a name. This is actually required, so I'm just going to call this our test set. Next, we have description. We could add a description if we'd like to, along with test parameters. This is just going to be your name and value pairs that might define how you set up the test. I'm not going to worry about that right now, but Codebeamer does have some cool support behind this, such as importing it from Excel. Finally, we have test cases and sets. This is where you're going to want to add a test case to your test set. So I'm going to select a new test case. Now this is the exact same as navigating to the test case tracker and creating one that way, except this is just already in the menu of test set and much easier to get to. So I'm just going to do it this way. We could define, the same things as some other ones. We have parent priority type. I'm going to skip down to verifies because this is a really cool feature of Codebeamer where it allows you to reference an item in a different tracker and assign tests to it. So I'm just going to assign it to this test item here because that way I can go to that item in the future and show you what that looks like. So just remember that we added this here, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. So for right now, I'm going to add a pre-action to show you what that will look like. A post-action will be consistent and capitalize that P. We could state whether it's reusable or not, and we could add a name. So I'm just going to say it is our test case. Similarly to the test set, we have description and test parameters if we'd like to add those. And then we have test steps. Now test steps are the bulk of a test case. When I said you'll be throwing 1 plus 1 equals 2 into a test case, this is what I was referring to. You'll have an action and an expected result that I'm going to say 1 plus 1 and 2, and this is what we are actually going to be testing. I'm going to add one more to show you what a failing one will look like, I'm going to say 2 plus 2, and I'm going to expect that to be 3. Now, obviously, it's not going to be 3, so that's going to be failing, and we'll get to see what that looks like when we run it. All right, so now we've filled all of this out, so I'm just going to select Save, and then we can save the test set as well. All right, so now that we have a test set created with a test case in it, and a test configuration that we can assign, we can actually create a new test run. Now this is the final tracker in the relationship of all of those that I mentioned. If I select this, you're going to see a little menu or a little notification popping up saying, hey, none of these are runnable, they're not accepted. What this is referring to is the state transition on the test case. Now we could bypass that by just saying run all test cases regardless of if they're accepted or not. But if we want to do the correct thing, let's navigate to the test cases, find our test case, and set the status to accepted. We can save that. And similarly to what I mentioned with test configuration, that is a test state, a state transition, that you're going to want to define permissions by navigating to the configuration of this tracker and say who is actually allowed to do this. I'm not too worried about that. I'm just going to say it is accepted and show you what the actual test looks like. So let's navigate back to the test set and go back to running this test run. And you can see the notification no longer appears because the test is accepted. And we have a few options. First up, we could say create as a regular test run or as a formal test run. All this is saying is if it is a formal test run, there will be extra structure to it. It will require more approvals and more state transitions for you to go to make sure that the test is in a state where you want it to be ran. I'm not going to worry about creating that, although I do encourage you to experiment with that to see if that is good for your own use. So I'm going to select regular test run, and down here I'm just going to create a single test run rather than creating test runs for each roller group or users. So I'm just going to select single test run and apply the configuration and click Save. All right, now we have a test run. This is an item in the test run tracker that has not actually been ran yet. As you can see in the status, it just says ready for execution. In order to execute that, we're going to want to either click here to run or go to the top left and select run. And this, as you can see, will bring up a whole new menu where you can pass or fail your actions. So 1 plus 1, what does that equal? 2. That matches the expected, so I'm going to pass the step. Next, we have 2 plus 2, that equals 4. That doesn't match 3, so I'm going to fail it. Now you could also block a step if you'd like to, or clear a step, or set it as not applicable. I'm not going to worry about those right now. I'm just going to fail it, because this is going to show you a cool little menu that allows you to create bugs. If your test run fails, it pops up with a menu saying report a bug. I'm going to click into this to show you what that looks like. It will be filling out properties of an item in the bugs tracker. So if you are using that bugs tracker, it'll throw a new item in there automatically for you. I am not using the bugs tracker right now, so I'm not going to go through with this. So I'm just going to cancel out of this and click Save. All right. Now that the test run has finished, you can see the status has moved to finished, and the result has moved to failed. Now this is because one of our test steps failed, so the test run is a failed run. Now what impact will that have on the items that it references? So now is the time, if you remember, that I set an item as verifies in the test case. If we find that item, which is a system requirement specification, here you can see here's the reference. It references back to the test case. So now we can go to test coverage and view all of the test runs that cover the referenced items. So I'm going to select Go, and this is a really cool feature of Codebeamer where we have what percent of the items in this tracker are covered. We only have one item in it, so it's 100%. What percent of those pass and fail? As you can see here, because we only have one run that failed for the only item, it is a 100% failed. So that's a really cool way of analyzing which items are going to be covered by the tests and if they passed or failed that Codebeamer has built into it. Yeah, so hopefully this taught you something about testing and how to test in Codebeamer. If you liked the video, please leave a like on the video. And if you have any other unanswered questions, please leave a comment down below. Yeah, thank you for watching.